The Wachau is considered one of the most beautiful regions in Europe. Mediterranean animals have their home here, so mild is the climate. Living history and primeval nature have existed in harmony here in the sun-drenched Danube Valley for millennia. It is a symphony of water, light and warmth that brings together rare life forms like nowhere else in Europe. The world-famous region of the Wachau extends along an area of only 30 kilometers in length, and yet it is its own world, home of the sun-seeking creatures. A harsh winter has buried the Wachau under frost and snow. Ice floes travel on the current of the Danube in front of the 1,000-year-old town of Dürnstein. All life appears to have been exiled or frozen. The few grapes still hanging on the vines are a slender diet for birds, like this magnificent male bullfinch. Hoarfrost blankets the wooded slopes with a silver-white crackling skin of crystals. It covers the meadow like a sugar coating. However, the Danube ensures that the magical winter moods disappear as quickly as they come. Its waters warm the slopes of the Wachau and melt the snow earlier than in other parts of Austria. The primroses are the first to push their blossoms up through the snow covering. The irises wait until the ground has thawed. Spring has well begun when the palm willows turn yellow. These brilliant inflorescences lure all kinds of insects to feast on them. The first bees are also already searching for food after the winter. They drink the nectar of the catkins and collect the yellow pollen. At the same time, they pollinate the plant. The ground bumblebee also profits from the surplus and dives into the sea of pollen. With its hind legs, it rubs the yellow pollen into balls, so-called pellets. These energy packets serve as a food supply in the bumblebee nest and for the breeding of the larvae. The spring sun warms the hillsides of the Wachau. The gnarled grapevines sprout. The Romans brought the vines to this area. Some vineyards in the Wachau are up to 2,000 years old. In incomparable white wines are still cultivated here. The minerals of the prehistoric rock are reflected in their aromas. Winemaking has characterized the culture of this area. It has been an important source of revenue for the Benedictine monastery of Grapevines for centuries. The Wachau is also world famous for its fruit orchards, in which apricot and cherry trees grow. The warm spring days have caused billions of blossoms to bloom. The first flying insects, bumblebees and bees, are lured by the captivating scent. A peacock butterfly also whirls through the explosion of blossoms. The Aesculapian snake has also ended its hibernation in April. It is one of the largest snakes in Europe and can grow to be more than 2 meters in length. The Aesculapian snake is not poisonous and is a real sun-seeking creature, as its main habitat is in Mediterranean countries. It feels right at home on the heated stony ground of the Wachau. The war lizard is not its typical prey. The snake prefers to hunt warm-blooded animals, especially mice, but also dormice, squirrels, and even young martens. However, caution is still advised. Sand lizards are hungry for the sun and cannot maintain their body temperature, but are instead dependent upon the warming energy of the sun. The love bite on the male is a sign that the female sand lizard is ready to mate. Strengthened by a sun bath, it goes in search of food. There are more than enough insects here. The Smaragd wines were named for the German designation of this large reptile from the area around Dürnstein, the western green lizard. The vines here grow on rocky terraces. The rocks are heated by the sun to a temperature of more than 30 degrees, the ideal hunting temperature for the western green lizard. Depending upon the sex and the age, the approximately 30 centimeter long lizards are colored the most varied shades of green. Some males wear a conspicuous blue collar during the mating season. They guard jealously over their territory and defend it against rivals. The blue throats are especially pronounced in May and then fade gradually. The females have much simpler markings and allow themselves to be courted by the male in a kind of courtship dance. Younger specimens eat tender insects. Fully grown animals need more substantial food. Lizards are visual hunters. They have good eyes and follow every movement in their surroundings. This field cricket doesn't have a chance. The western green lizard pulps it with its powerful horned jaws and devours it whole. In the Wachau, the Danube has dug its way through the oldest rock in Austria, hard, crystalline stone, the Bohemian Massive. Sandy, dry grasslands lie hidden in the valleys. Here, the ground squirrel finds seeds, roots, and other vegetable matter. The cautious ground squirrels also like to maintain an overview. which is why they prefer open land, where they establish their holes for living and protection. In many parts of Europe, the heat-dependent ground squirrels are already extinct, but they can still find a retreat in the Wachau. They are always on the alert and even eat at attention. Ground squirrels are loners. Although they live together in groups, they have no close social bonds. Their enormous caution helps them reach ages of up to 10 years, an astonishing age for a relatively small mammal. Wachau wine benefits from the many minerals that have deposited as a sandy loess layer along the Danube Valley. These porous slopes attract an especially rare bird that lives here in colonies and builds its nest holes in the soft rock. The bee-eater primarily lives in warm climate zones such as North Africa or Asia. However, the sunny islands of the Wachau are among the few places in Europe where they can also be seen. Its brilliantly colourful feathers are among the most beautiful in the ornithological world. The bee-eaters watch for insects from the treetops, bumblebees and bees, but also dragonflies and butterflies. They only fly with their prey to their nest holes to feed their hungry young when they feel unobserved. Rain comes seldom in the Wachau, but when the cold downdrafts of the Waldviertel meet with the Pannonian warm air, this can result in brief but intense storms. Summer hail, which can destroy an entire harvest in no time, is feared by the wine growers. But it is usually nothing more than a damp, warm shower, which is greedily absorbed by the vines. The sun quickly drives off the dark clouds. This black redstart has attracted an Aesculapian snake. It attempts to divert the snake from its nest, which is hidden in a breeder beneath the roof of a barn. Beetle and butterfly larvae contain a great deal of protein and are therefore especially in demand for breeding. The bird parents must always remain alert because the snake would love to feed on their young. The Aesculapian snake is the only snake in Austria that regularly climbs. It spreads its belly scales in order not to slip. It picks up the scent with its tongue. Suddenly, it finds an unwatched thrush nest with eggs in it. But how does the snake crack this egg? By extending its lower jaw extremely, the snake is able to choke down the entire egg with the shell. Its digestive juices will later decompose the egg. The vineyards in the Wachau come very close to the localities, like here in Dürnstein, with its characteristic blue Baroque church. The hedgehog is an animal that appreciates proximity to humans. It is a typical synanthrope that likes to roam through the gardens in search of insects and worms. It likes it warm and enjoys the sun. Hedgehogs have an exceptional sense of smell and extremely sensitive hearing. Their ears are particularly specialized to pick up the high tones of insects. Protected in its den, this hedgehog has brought several young into the world. The blind little ones are still completely dependent upon her, and she must keep them warm and nurse them. Their needles are still delicate and soft and can't yet provide them with protection. Although the Wachau is a cultivated landscape, there are still a number of wild animals, and some are perfectly adapted to the environment. The praying mantis prays to the sun above all else. It needs Mediterranean warmth and finds it at these latitudes mainly in the Wachau. When it motionlessly lurks for insects in the tendrils of vine due to its green camouflage, it can hardly be discovered. Specimens often sit directly at the side of the road without being discovered. The bush cricket, with its long antenna, also lives in the immediate vicinity. The exotic-looking predators even eat their own species. Here is a band-winged grasshopper. It is devoured down to the last pair of legs. The tiny crab spider has the perfect camouflage as a resident of the meadow. It is hardly visible on the yellow dandelion. It sits on flowers and waits for small beetles, hoverflies, bees and wasps that come to drink nectar. If it doesn't have any luck there, it changes location and looks for another flower. Its body can change color by transferring its pigment inwards. In this way, the crab spider grows lighter and lighter until it is as white as the flower on which it is sitting. Although it is hardly a centimeter in size, the camouflage gives it the advantage of surprise, even when its prey is much larger than itself. The vineyard walls of the Wachau are like a stone oven in the summer and get extremely hot. This is why real scorpions live here, although they are only a few centimeters long. The poison of the common yellow scorpion can only paralyze insects. A sting is usually harmless to humans. However, despite its defensive sting, the scorpion also has enemies on the watch for it. The praying mantis is much larger than the scorpion, and it clutches it in such a way that it can't attack with its tail. The hedgehog goes hunting in the twilight. It can smell insect prey. The praying mantis assumes a defensive position. However, although it defends itself, it is no match for the hedgehog in terms of size and strength. Small tributaries of the Danube are oases of wilderness, the last remainders in the Wachau environment. This is how it looked everywhere before humans began to cultivate here. The beaver, Europe's largest rodent, lives in these alluvial forests. It can grow to weigh up to 30 kilos. Beaver require a certain depth of water, and if they don't find it, they dam the water. They fell trees with their sharp incisors. Such biting damage makes the herbivores an enemy of forest owners and fruit farmers. However, the beaver creates new habitats for many animals with its landscaping. The kingfisher also profits from the work of beaver, the landscape gardener. It hunts fish, tadpoles, aquatic insects and small crabs on the dammed, shallow tributaries of the Danube, where it also builds its nest holes in the loess of the bank slopes. It warms itself again in the sun after diving into the clear water. It has an overview of the water from an elevated perch until it spots the next prey. It then returns to its observation post. The kingfisher was almost exterminated in Europe due to its brilliant feathers. It was also hunted by fishermen. It still finds retreat areas in Austria in the Wachau region. Kingfishers sometimes hunt so quickly that even the little egret is shocked. The bird can catch fish nearly as large as itself, like this roach. The kingfisher has built a breeding burrow for its nest near the water. The fish is delivered fresh. Raising the young is a feat for the bird parents. They continuously fly back and forth in order to feed 4 to 8 nestlings. Water and warmth, an ideal combination for the water snake. It suns itself on the boulders of the sun-bathed shore and stores up energy for its next hunt in the water. The non-poisonous water snake is easy to recognize due to the crescent moon-shaped markings behind its head. It feeds on tadpoles, amphibians, and frogs. Warmth and water are also a paradise for many insects. And all insect eaters, such as this tree frog, which waits for hours in the heat and snaps at anything that moves. The grey heron observes a similar principle. It stands immobile in the shallow water near the shore and waits for fish. It changes its location occasionally. That patience pays off because it has caught a giant whiting here. But has it bitten off more than it can chew? The second try is successful. This time the heron has the fish tight in its bill and is finally able to choke it down. In the heat of the summer sun, the shallow water of the cut-off meander of the Danube warms up to nearly tropical temperatures. The pike doesn't need to wait long here. Another predatory fish prefers the deeper water of the Danube, the zander. This perch species prefers the murky areas in the river current. The tasty zander grows quickly and in individual cases can grow to be more than 1 meter long. The Vels catfish also prefers to remain on the muddy bottom of the river. There it finds dead fish, but also crustaceans and worms. It otherwise hunts for almost anything. In addition to fish, it also eats amphibians and small aquatic birds. Limited vision is no problem. Vels catfish have an excellent sense of touch and smell, and they can also sense electrical fields surrounding their prey. Their size, the fish can grow to be up to 3 meters long, and their exceptional abilities have made the Vels catfish a legendary animal. Its rank as the giant of the Danube can only be challenged by one other fish, which, however, has become very rare. The beluga is a species of sturgeon. It comes from far away, from the Black or Caspian seas. It migrates up the Danube to spawn. The meter-long animals can weigh up to a ton. They have been rendered almost extinct because of the demand for their caviar. The females burrow holes in the rocky bottom in the spring and oviposit millions of eggs. The young are then pulled back towards the sea by the current. It takes 10 to 20 years until they, in turn, start their migration. Only then are the animals sexually mature. They can grow to be very old and can live for more than a century. Myths and fairy tales also surround the beluga, that it has overturned fishing boats and attacked people. However, the only thing certain is that it sometimes also hunts aquatic birds. That's a goosander family paddling here. These birds from the duck family are exceptional underwater swimmers and can dive to depths of up to 10 meters. The young must search for their own food from the start and learn to be quicker than their siblings. Breeding goosanders are extremely rare in Austria. There are only a few breeding pairs in the Wachau region. The little ones have to learn to fend for themselves in only a few days. The mother usually leaves them before they can fly. So close to the water, the stoat could be dangerous to the young goosander. This is why the wagtail has retreated to a tree. This animal is brown in the summer. The famous ermine whitecoat only grows in the winter. This den is dangerously close to the water, but the ermine family wants to protect itself from its enemies, the foxes or badgers. Stoats are loners. They only come together for a short time during the mating season in summer. Numerous smaller rivers in Lower Austria empty into the Danube. This is of great importance to many species of fish, but it is especially important to the Danube salmon. Each year, these Danube salmon migrate many kilometers up particular streams to spawn. Specially built fish ladders help them overcome obstacles. The Danube salmon is a highly endangered giant. It can grow to be 1.3 meters long and weigh more than 30 kilos. Specimens have already been caught in the region that weigh more than double that. Prior to mating, the fish position themselves next to one another in the shallow water. The female burrows a shallow depression for spawning on the river floor with her tail fin. This process is repeated by many couples. At some point, the females then lay tens of thousands of eggs in the depressions, which are then fertilized by the male Danube salmon. Other fish immediately attempt to eat the eggs. Only a small fraction of the eggs will survive. Of these, only a few will grow to adulthood. This is ensured by, among other animals, the European otter. In past years, the numbers of this aquatic marten have increased significantly. The European otter can once again be found everywhere in the rivers of the Wachau. It is an exceptional swimmer and, among others, catches many old and sick fish. The European otter loves cool, flowing waters, but likes to find a sunny spot to digest its meals. The Danube is one of the most important transport arteries in Europe, and many vessels pass through the Wachau daily. Many of them come from far away, for example, from the Black Sea coast of Romania. The ballast water they pump out often brings stowaways to a new home. The spawn of foreign fish species is transported to Austrian rivers and waters with marine traffic. Some of it finds living conditions here that the organisms can adapt to. For example, this is the Black Sea Goby, a fish originating from the Danube Delta. The immigrant has increased in numbers dramatically. It has been found in the Wachau since the beginning of the new millennium. the Black Sea Goby might become a threat to the domestic fish species with which it competes for food. The crayfish is endangered for another reason. It reacts extremely sensitively to chemical impurities in the water. It is, in fact, itself a kind of health authority because it eats dead fish and thus prevents the spread of fungal diseases in the water. Its claws are its cutlery. Another immigrant has long found a place in the hearts and especially the mouths of the resident population, and has even become a trademark of the Wachau: the apricot. This fruit came from Asia and later to Europe with the Turks. However, the sun-hungry trees have only been systematically cultivated for around 120 years. They have an incomparable aroma and are real children of the sun. Because many of the Wachau vineyards have been left in as natural a state as possible, one can still find rare healing plants here. For example, birthwort with its yellow blossoms. It feels quite at home here in the sunny Wachau and has contributed to a high level of specialization there. The southern festoon caterpillar feeds only on this poisonous plant and, in this way, becomes inedible itself. It signalizes this to its enemies with its bright signal colors. The butterfly into which it transforms is also protected by the poison of birthwort. The houseleek crowns the hot stone walls of the vineyards. Its thick leaves prevent the evaporation of the water in the great heat. The steep slopes above are covered by areas of dry grass. They have their own microclimate, which produces special plant communities. Feathergrass loves such barren soil. The tips of the blades of grass have pinnate beards. The dry grass is its own world, and rarities are not always immediately recognizable. There, where there is more moisture, the brilliant yellow blossoms of the lady's slipper orchid, the largest domestic orchid, thrive. It is found at only very few places and is very strictly protected. The ancient trading route along the Danube was once hemmed and guarded by mighty fortresses. In many cases, there is not much left of them, but legend and weathered masonry. Hagstein is one of the most distinctive medieval ruins in Austria. A few kilometers downstream is Dürnstein Castle, in which Duke Leopold V of Austria once held the English king Richard I Lionheart captive. Young Eurasian eagle owls wait for food in the protection of the rough stone wall beneath the fortress. One of the adult birds guards over the offspring from a tree. It is quite large, but it is not yet independent. The parents still fly out every day to hunt at twilight. In search of small mammals, they soar close above the ground. The Eurasian Eagle Owl is easy to recognize by its feathered ears. These large owls collect stocks of dead mice so that the young don't have to go hungry during poor weather. They remain true to their rocky nesting places over generations when they aren't disturbed there. However, many inconspicuous creatures requiring warmth feel at home between the wine and rock of the Wachau. They make their homes in the warm soil of the eroded prehistoric rock. These mysterious funnels, for example, were created by small, trapping insects. This ant is bombarded with tiny grains of sand. Responsible is a so-called ant lion lurking at the bottom of the depression, and which hardly measures more than 1 centimeter. In attempting to flee, it slides into the funnel directly into the arms of its enemy. The ant lion paralyzes it with poison from its jaws and desiccates it. Pieridae gather where the soil is damp. These butterflies use a fine proboscis to suck up water and mineral substances from the ground in a way very similar to that in the tropics. A group of gossamer-winged butterflies is also taking in moisture here. The delicate butterflies are the dwarfs among the butterflies. The span of their wings rarely exceeds a few centimeters. The absorption of moisture is important for survival due to the many hours of sunlight in the Wachau. The first brown leaves signal the coming of autumn. Soon the wine grapes can be picked. The mineral substances from the soil provide it with a very special accent. The Wachau is famous for its white wines, especially Riesling and Veltliner. Machinery is rarely used for harvesting. Much still needs to be done by hand on the steep slopes. Each of the small sites has its own very personal cachet. Not only humans appreciate the fruity grapes. The red Admiral Butterfly enjoys the last hot summer days in the Wachau and the juice of the overripe grapes. This butterfly is a true southerner and flies from Italy to the Wachau. Now, while the autumn mists rise up out of the Danube Valley, the last grapes are harvested and humans and nature prepare for the winter. It's still quite warm, but the sunny days are getting shorter. The deciduous forests along the Danube are changing colour. The vineyards are quiet and abandoned. The low temperatures are already making the western green lizard lazy and slow. It's time to look for winter quarters beneath the rocks or under a pile of leaves. However, the Wachau is also an attraction during the damp and cold season, this time for winter guests. Cormorants from the north migrate southward where the waters don't freeze and they can fish undisturbed. Following their hunt, they dry their feathers by spreading out their wings. The start over the water is somewhat difficult, but it's necessary to reach the treetops where the cormorant colony sleeps. Several dozen of the birds live here in summer. The number can be considerably greater in the cold season. Despite the southern character of the Wachau, the winter here can be continentally cold and bring hard frost and snow with it. The grapes overlooked during the harvest are welcome food for the thrushes. Due to the covering of snow, it finds neither worms nor insects. The colourful European goldfinches also find their way to the abandoned vineyards, as do the hawfinches. Windfall from the fruit orchards varies the meagre diet and helps the blackbirds survive through the winter. Dragonflies soared here only a few weeks ago. They don't survive the cold season. The praying mantis also lies frozen in the snow and will likely be devoured by another animal. Her frost-proof clutch hangs on a trunk. A new generation will hatch from it in the spring. The gaps and cracks in the rock walls of the vineyards offer sun-seeking creatures protection in the winter. For example, the western green lizard. It has fallen into torpor. Its body temperature is low. Its pulse and respiration have slowed down dramatically. The field scorpion is also lying in motionless torpor nearby. This is how it endures the weeks of frost. Ice floes are travelling along the Danube. The floes are stranded on the Cormorant Island, where a white-tailed sea eagle has settled. He only comes to the Wachau in the winter to search for food on the river. Aquatic birds such as the mallard must keep their eyes open when he's around. However, it is easier for the white-tailed sea eagle to eat the carrion offered by nature. Here he is dismembering a dead fish that was probably dropped by another predator. But the ducks remain alert. The golden-eyed ducks visiting from Scandinavia also don't trust the large bird of prey. They simply dive when danger arises. Life beneath the surface of the water has also slowed down. Due to the low temperatures, the fish move only lazily, and they hardly require any food to maintain this low level of energy. But the days are already growing noticeably longer, and the sun comes out again. The domestic goosandes enjoy its rays together with conspecifics from the north. Soon they will feel the impulse to migrate. The time of tranquility passes quickly, In only a few weeks, thousands of sun-seeking creatures will once again fill the Wachau with young life.